Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today and we are sitting down to talk about Avowed. I went hands-on with this game for a couple of hours via a digital preview opportunity provided by Xbox, so I got to play it here in the comfort of my own home. And this preview is really well timed because Xbox has been insisting for a while that Avowed was delayed out of 2024 because, you know, there's just a lot of games coming out right now, particularly in the realm of Xbox. You had Stalker 2, you had Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 when it's actually playable, Black Ops 6, and of course Indiana Jones is coming up soon as well. So it kind of made sense, but the timing of this preview is great because the rumor was that Avowed was going to release in November. So taking a look at this build was a odd angle for me to be like, what if it did come out this month? How would we be feeling about it? So it's a good gut check on that front. I got to see the game's first open area in Dawn Shore and explore all it had within it. I also got to see the game's prologue and character creator. I can talk about that with you, but I can't show anything, unfortunately, as of this point in time. So the question is, if Avowed was to release in this month, like originally it was supposed to, would it have been in a great enough state? Did Xbox truly delay it because it was already fine, but you know, it's just in a better spot now? I don't know too much about that one. I do think there are some tech issues here. They're not in a massive abundance here, but there are some things that definitely need ironing out before the game's release. I'll get into all of it, but first, a quick word from today's sponsor. The following video is sponsored by Helix Sleep. All right, real talk time, everybody. I don't value my sleep as much as I should, and this year was a major turning point for that, getting better rest, and what it has done for my life beyond that is incredible, and I know as gamers, we like to stay up late, still guilty as charged, but how did I get to a place where I really valued my sleep more? I invested in a better mattress, and that's why I'm here to tell you about Helix Sleep. Earlier this year in June, Helix Sleep hooked your boy up with a brand new mattress. Now, my previous one was sincerely hurting my back. In turn, my posture was worsening. I was sitting here in this chair like a C, just working, and that led to more back problems, as I'm sure many of you who have suffered from that understand. Fortunately, with the mattress they provided me, that's a thing of the past. And also, that means it's a thing of the past for my parents because I liked it so much, they got one too. And that's because the answer to my prayers and my problems was a great mattress. And here's how Helix Sleep can set you up. Before buying, you got to take what's called a sleep quiz. Now, this sleep quiz is really important because it understands your sleep type and your body preferences. It also accounts for if you have someone else in bed with you, like a partner. So whether it be something more firm, soft, you're a side sleeper, you're on your back, you're on your stomach, whatever it is, they account for that and then recommend a mattress specifically for you. For me, I'm a back sleeper. My chiropractor recommended that and it's done me wonders, although it took a while to adjust. So that's why I ended up with the Helix Sleep Midnight Luxe. Haven't looked back, so what's next for you? What you want to do is head to the link in the description down below, helixsleep.com/MrMattyPlays. Right now, they're running a limited time offer for Black Friday, 27% off site-wide, 2 pillows for free, plus a free bedding bundle for Luxe and Elite mattresses. It's available right now, so go ahead, check it out. Link in the description down below, QR code on screen, whichever works for you, and shout out to Helix Sleep for sponsoring today's video. So the main thing that stood out to me while playing Avowed is the open-ended level design. This is really different from any Obsidian game you've played before. It's very different from Fallout New Vegas, where you could just talk your way through things. It's very different from the Outer Worlds, where you could definitely shoot or talk your way through things. In this game, you can stealth. In this game, there are multiple options of approach, and I found it to be refreshingly great and fitting for an Obsidian game because the choice wasn't just in its dialogue and how I would handle my approach with certain situations, but also how I would crawl about the level. I felt there was an equal level of choice there. The areas are much bigger feeling than the Outer Worlds by comparison, whether it be the towns or the plethora of locations for you to explore. If this is an idea of what the rest of the game may be like, then I personally underestimated Avowed's scope. For comparison, Dawn Shore reminded me of Monarch, and Monarch was the largest area to be found in the first Outer Worlds game. I know it's been a lot of years since then, but that was still a big, open, expansive area, and I was surprised by how sprawling, you know, Avowed really was, especially in this opening area where normally they keep things tame, but it was really well done, and I was enjoying the moment-to-moment exploration of seeing things in the distance going, hey, what is that out there? And checking it out and finding something cool within. That was a great feeling that I've missed for a long while. But really, I think the level design clicked for me when I was approaching a Zorip base. And it was this fortress that was just full of enemies. And I went through pretty much head on up the middle. And it wasn't until afterwards that I was doing what I call a loot sweep, you know, checking out all the dead bodies, seeing what I missed along the way. Now that everyone's dead, I can freely pick from all the chests and everything, that I found a Zorp on the outside asleep next to an explosive container. So I figured, well, this is an easy kill. So I shot the explosive container and it popped open a hole in the wall that opened up a completely different entrance to this fortress that would have allowed me to enter from the backside, and actually got a couple more stealth kills than the more guns blazing approach that I took. Quite literally, I did have a gun in my hand in this fantasy game. It's wild. We'll talk about builds in a little bit. But that was a moment I went, oh wow, there was more options here than I really thought were available to me. Like, I went up the gut, stealth where I could, but there was actually this side entrance that could have been completely way more quiet. You can also use the elements to reach different areas. For example, I'll use a fire spell, or I told Kai to use his fire spell to burn down some spider webs. So you'll have moments like that throughout. And I'm not judging it because it is early on in the game, but I do hope for the rest of the game these become more complex and kind of reward my creativity in a way like I'd say a Breath of the Wild does, because the interactivity is there. So I'm hoping that it does elevate as the game goes on, and that these were just kind of training wheel moments. If it is just as it is, it'll be fine. I just think maybe a little bit of missed potential there. Because again, I think the real heartbeat of this game, I mean, you have the Obsidian elements there in dialogue and in choice. We'll talk about that. But it really is this level design. And I feel like if they tap into the maximum potential for that, you got something really good here. Now, all of this exploration I did was actually never interrupted by loading screens. Like, once I got to Dawn Shore, I was there. But that also means that no, there isn't that Skyrim moment of stumbling upon some ruins and finding a sprawling dungeon within, at least not yet. You know, I found when I was playing in third person, which we'll also talk about in a little bit, this tower, and I was scaling it, platforming it, and at the end I found this totem that you can set up within your camp, and I guess there's multiple of these collectibles. And so that's kind of the driver for the exploration in this game, is the cool loot that you're going to find. And there are a lot of unique pieces, at least labeled as such. I don't know across the stretch of the game how that's going to scale out, but I kept getting really unique pieces of weapons and armor that look completely different from anything else I was seeing in the game, which you already know, that just drives me forward. That just checks something off for me that goes so far. You can't go everywhere, at least not right away. There is a little bit of rubber banding. For example, I found a godless ruin, and it was inhabited by a bunch of bandits, and they were kind of like tier 2, it seemed like. They had a little number 2 next to their health bars, and I tried to take them out anyway, but they wiped your boy out really quickly. So I had to stay humble and live to fight another day. I'll come back to them a bit later. So you can't just go complete unhinged exploration, but there is a lot of fulfilling stuff to find. I found an abandoned shack, and I ended up jumping on the roof and breaking down the roof itself and dropping in and finding a chest in there. So there is a lot of good stuff to find here, and I just loved exploring the levels because, especially as someone who loves Obsidian games, it was just very different. Like, most of the times you're just on the ground, and I appreciate that. That's totally fine for me. So this is a big evolution in that, and I think they've handled it really well so far. Now, when you're not exploring, you can settle down at party camps. You can upgrade stuff while you're at the party camps, but I think the best draw here is going to be having a chat with your party members. So I got to sit down and talk with Kai, and this is a good time to highlight something I mentioned in my first preview of Avowed, which is that the conversations in this game can be very long in a good way. Like, I love that when I'm choosing to settle down and have a chat with one of my party members, that we can really get into the weeds of it. Like, we were just recapping all the things that happened since we first met, and then there were plenty of questions afterwards that I could have asked Kai just to learn more about him, learn more about this world. And I just love how, similar to an older BioWare game, I can just dive deep into these characters and spend a lot of time talking to them. So I really enjoyed those moments of respite, especially because at nighttime when you're at the party camp, the way the lighting is done, the way the environment looks, really pretty game. And I mean, just, it's a looker in general. I mentioned this in my first preview as well back in August, but I feel even more sure of it now that this is Obsidian's best looking game yet. And I definitely think it is one of the better looking games I've seen in recent memory. The world, the character models, the lighting, it's just really well done. But this is where there's a little bit of an asterisk on that. We delayed the game because it was just a better month for the game to release in, and as well, better for the Xbox business, because there are technical hiccups that you'll find. For example, when I was first starting to explore Dawn Shore, it is very pretty, but I was seeing the world loading in right before my eyes, just sets of trees, buildings, things were constantly loading in before me. unfortunately, we do have a few months until the game's release where that is something I can imagine is ironed out. However, this doesn't scream to me, yeah, the game was pretty good to go, but we just wanted to give it a few extra months because that's better for our players. The frame rate does dip a decent amount when you're in third person as well. It's definitely below 60 FPS, not coming close to 30, at least in my experience with playing on my PC, which has a 3080 8-core processor and 32 gigabytes of RAM. But the frame rate does dip. And also, I mean, as much as I like the third person, I wish there was a quick hotkey to switch to that. At least in my playing, I did not see this. You would have to go into the game options menu and toggle that on, because I went first into the controls and thought, oh, maybe it's just not in this build at all. But then I found it, again, as I mentioned earlier, in the game options. So you have to switch it on and off through there. And this kind of stinks, because one thing I love in, say, any BGS game is I'll get a new piece of armor or a new weapon, I'll equip it, I'll go in third person, check myself out, admire my look for a moment, and then I'll go back to first person. The fact that I have to go into menus and swap that out, at least right now, I hope it's something they can figure out where there's a hotkey you can press to kind of just flip between these two, because man, oh man, would it be a difference maker. There was also one conversation I had with an ambassador where the audio just straight up disappeared when I first met him. And at first I thought like, oh, it's an earlier build from where the game is supposed to come out. Maybe this line just hasn't been recorded yet because of the release date they set, but then the guy just started to talk afterwards and I could hear him clear as day. So yeah, there's a decent amount of technical issues here for sure. Enough popped up where I would say, yeah, this game needs a couple more months, where the release date feels right. But I just want to make sure you all, through my experience, can at least read through some of the corporate speak that you were seeing on the other end and not just gobbling it all up. Now, on the gameplay side of things, oh my word, there have been some improvements since that August build I played. For starters, the over-reliance on finishers isn't really there anymore. That was something I complained about because it just felt like every enemy I was killing was going into a weird, long, janky slow motion, and then you'd pop the enemy, they'd be dead, and it was cool at first, but it was happening so many times. Now there's a stun gauge. When you stun the enemy, you can choose to do that, and it is fulfilling because you have to work to stun them. So when you do let loose that big attack, especially with like the wand, when I did it on this bear boss after I met the ambassador, I was just, oh my God, man, I like brought up a bunch of elements from the ground itself. It was actually really cool. I was like, that felt satisfying. And that's where I realized like, okay, I haven't seen this until this point in time. That's a much better balance compared to what we were getting before in that earlier build. So less of a reliance on that. I think the visual feedback is where it needs to be when it comes to combat. So much so that I forgot this was a concern/complaint of mine in the months leading into this preview. So that was really nice to see. And the last thing I would like to call out is stamina management. I don't know if they tweaked this, but it felt, at least in the early game, much more important. Like, you know, just like in Oblivion where every action you take would cost you stamina. It's the same thing here. You're going to be dodging a lot. You're going to be jumping a lot. You're going to be swinging a lot. And it doesn't matter what you're doing. You're going to be spending stamina where you can't just go in gung-ho. So there's a little bit of in and out with it, which I thought was also an improvement. Maybe I'm just recognizing it more now, but it felt much better in the terms of combat. And while the level design is open-ended, so are the builds. And there are so many different weapons and options that you have early on. It is truly overwhelming. Like every weapon I found, oh, a wand, I want to try that. Oh, a gun, I want to try that. Oh, a sword, I want to try that. Ooh, a dagger, I want to try that. Oh, a two-handed axe. Okay, I want to try that too. There were just so many things headed my way that I wanted to try. It was ridiculous. Now, Avowed does support multiple equipment builds, so you don't have to make too many tough decisions. At least in the early going, you get to switch between two equipment loadouts. So I kind of had my ranged weapon option and my close range weapon option. But if you're having a tough time deciding, you do have at least two sets of equipment that you can switch between, which I think at least eased some of the pressure I felt. Still, reading over all the ability options and attributes is a monumental task unto itself. And that doesn't even get into the companion abilities you also have. When you look at the attributes, there's two examples I want to call out. Might, which impacts your damage, and then Dexterity, which impacts your attack speed. So you could build to kind of rush these two and just have a character that can wield a typically slow swinging weapon with much greater efficiency. Or you could do what I did and kind of make this ranger wizard hybrid build. So at close range, I would have my wand and my spell book, and I was really enjoying that. But then when I was at range, I was using my arquebus, and that thing changed my life. That made me really fall in love with Avowed and how the levels were laid out and how I was picking enemies from a distance. And I loved how I'd like pop someone in the head and they'd all look around like, yo, who just did that? They didn't immediately detect you. And I thought that was nice because after coming off of Stalker 2, where I would pop one person and everyone would know where I was immediately, I like how this game, there's a little bit of confusion, so maybe I can get a second shot off before everyone goes, oh, the gunshot came from over there. So yeah, great equipment options, great ability options. Some of them are just passives like, oh, your wand does 25% more damage. Some are unlocking spells that would be in the grimoire permanently. So then maybe you swap out that grimoire you have for instead a different grimoire that has other spells that you typically wouldn't have. And now your options are really starting to open up in an impressive way. And that doesn't even get into the godlike abilities that can really turn the tide of the battle. So there's a lot here. I'm definitely optimistic when it comes to gameplay builds. I hope it stays on this trajectory, but after my Dragon Age the Veilguard preview, where I was very optimistic about build quality in that game, yeah, I'm going to take a breath here and just wait to see the final product in that manner. Now, I can't show you the character creator. I thought it was decent, but I didn't like how my character came out. The godlike features that you have to attach to your face, like these plants, or my character has, I don't know what's coming out of his face, but it's just not good looking. I don't know how else to put it. I don't like when a game has characters that I don't really like to look at. And I kind of feel that way about most of the characters I've seen so far in Avowed. Maybe I'm just getting used to it, but even though I love Kai's voice actor, it's the same one as Garrus. Like the way he looks, just not really feeling it. There's a character in the prologue that is like insane looking. And so maybe I just have to adjust to this world a little bit more. In fairness, I have not played Pillars of Eternity yet. My overambitious goal in my mind is to be able to finish that at least before Avowed comes out, but I think I'm biting off more than I can chew there. Point being, though, is I'm still adjusting to the visual style of these characters. I'll leave it to the more hardcore Pillars fans to decide if this looks good or not, but for me, just looks a little odd. I don't know. However, fortunately, my character is nice and armored up. So when I'm playing in third person, it does have that Skyrim feel. I will say the jogging animation has a little, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but I call it the poopy pants run, where you're kind of like waddling around like, oh man, don't want this to fall down my leg. It reminds me a lot of that. So I might end up just kind of going first person only in this, especially when you combine it with the performance dips. And also for me, I thought the VFX were far more effective when you were in first person. It felt like way more epic and intense and chaotic, and I like that feeling, and a little bit of that was lost in third person. That's why I think the quick switch would be really great, because then I could explore in third person, and when combat starts, I can zoom right in, and I'm back in first person. That said, though, the character creator does bring one great element to the forefront, and that is dialogue. So when you're building your character, you can choose like your backstory, if you will. Like I was an arcane scholar, and oh my gosh, it is used so frequently. I think some people will actually feel like it's too much. It might even feel to them, I put this in quotes, watered down, because to be fair, it is a lot of flavor text. It's not like every skill check you're doing is finding a new solution somewhere. This is a lot of flavor text, but it gave me a true sense of self of who I wanted to be, down to my attributes, where I'm a much more perceptive individual and I'm an arcane scholar. So I was kind of playing this egotistical mage, if you will, who has a gun, by the way. And I was really digging that. So I was getting into my character. So I think the dialogue enables a kind of be who you want to be. And then the world enables, at least early on, a potential play as you want to play. And so I'm feeling optimistic about Avowed. I know it's tough competition in February, but I just saw they did 5-day early access for the premium edition. And then you see it's on Battle.net, it's on Game Pass. So doesn't look like they are going to be shying away from the release window with a lot of big games surrounding Avowed. And so hopefully it finds its home there where people do check it out, because right now this preview really did get me excited at the end of the day. This was kind of the Obsidian experience I was looking for when I first saw the developer direct. I feel like they didn't show the right things. And then when I saw the preview in August, I felt a little bit more encouraged by the amount of dialogue there, but it was just a small snippet. It was a dungeon. This is the more, walking, talking, killing that I expect from an Obsidian game, except it looked better and it also had better exploration in a lot of ways. And so I'm very optimistic heading into the game's release. So I enjoyed it a lot. Very pumped to see what Obsidian's cooking in full. Hopefully I fall more in love with the characters, both appearance-wise as well as dialogue-wise. But right now, I feel like I got a lot to be more excited about with this game, provided they do just tighten up some of the the technical kinks in this game. Otherwise, though, I'm looking forward to getting your thoughts on Avowed down below. Are you still excited for this game? Has Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 kind of stepped in and pushed it aside for you? Are there other games in February that have disturbed your excitement, or are you on that hype train for Avowed? Let me know down below. Other than that, I'll catch you all in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.